Welcome to Fact or Fiction, AI Verdict, where the world's biggest mysteries go on trial. Today, simulation theory, the idea that everything you see, everything you experience, everything you believe to be real, might be nothing more than code running on a computer somewhere else. We'll look at where the story began. We'll hear the strongest case for and against, and then the AI delivers its verdict. Let's find out. Right now, you are listening to these words. You can see the screen in front of you. You can feel the weight of your device in your hands. You believe you are a conscious being experiencing reality directly. But what if none of that is true? What if your entire existence, your memories, your thoughts, your sense of being alive is a simulation running inside a computer built by an advanced civilization? What if the universe itself is not made of atoms and energy, but of information and code? This is not science fiction. This is simulation theory, and some of the most brilliant minds in physics and philosophy believe it might actually be true. The question is simple: are we living in base reality, or are we characters in someone else's program? The modern form of simulation theory begins in 2003 with a philosopher named Nick Bostrom at Oxford University. Bostrom published a paper called "Are You Living in a Computer Simulation?" It was not a wild speculation, it was a formal philosophical argument built on probability and logic. Bostrom's reasoning was straightforward. If three things are true, then we are almost certainly living in a simulation. First, if civilizations can survive long enough to develop advanced technology, some of them will eventually have the computational power to run detailed simulations of conscious beings. Second, if a civilization reaches that level, they will run many simulations. Not just one or two, thousands, maybe millions. Third, if that happens, then the number of simulated conscious beings in the universe will vastly outnumber real ones. And if simulated beings outnumber real ones by 1,000,000 to 1, then statistically you are far more likely to be one of the simulated minds than one of the real ones. Bostrom called this the simulation argument, and it spread rapidly. Physicists started to take it seriously. Elon Musk said the odds we are in base reality are billions to 1 against. Neil deGrasse Tyson put the chances at 50-50. The idea moved from philosophy journals into mainstream scientific debate. But the argument is older than Bostrom. The idea that reality might be an illusion has roots in ancient philosophy. Plato's allegory of the cave suggested we see only shadows of true reality. Descartes questioned whether an evil demon could be feeding him false sensory experiences. Eastern philosophies have long described the physical world as Maya, illusion. What Bostrom did was take an ancient philosophical question and reframe it in terms of computation, probability, and modern physics. And that is when simulation theory became something science had to address. So, what is the case for simulation theory being true? Let's look at the evidence. Start with physics. The universe behaves in ways that are strikingly similar to how a computer simulation would behave if it were trying to conserve processing power. The universe has a speed limit. Nothing can travel faster than light. In a simulation, that makes perfect sense. The speed of light is not just a physical constant. It is the maximum rate at which information can propagate through the system. If the universe is a simulation, the speed of light is the refresh rate. The universe has a minimum resolution. At the smallest scales, space and time are not continuous. They are quantized. The Planck length is the smallest measurable unit of space. The Planck time is the smallest measurable unit of time. Below that scale, physics breaks down. Why? Because in a simulation, you need a minimum pixel size. You cannot render reality at infinite resolution. The Planck scale is the pixel size of the universe. Quantum mechanics. Particles do not have definite properties until they are observed. Before observation, they exist in a state of superposition, all possible states at once. Only when measured do they collapse into a single defined state. This is exactly how a well-designed simulation would work. You do not waste processing power rendering things nobody is looking at. You only calculate the specifics when someone observes. The double-slit experiment demonstrates this perfectly. Fire a single particle at 2 slits. It behaves like a wave and goes through both slits at once, creating an interference pattern. But the moment you try to observe which slit it goes through, the wave function collapses and it behaves like a particle going through one slit. The act of observation changes reality. That is not how a physical universe should work, but it is exactly how a simulation would. Then there is the fine-tuning problem. The fundamental constants of physics, the strength of gravity, the charge of the electron, the mass of the proton, are fine-tuned to an absurd degree of precision. If any of them were even slightly different, stars could not form, atoms could not exist, and life would be impossible. The odds of all these constants randomly having exactly the right values are astronomically small. One explanation is that we live in a multiverse where every possible combination exists, and we just happen to be in one of the rare universes that works. The other explanation is that someone designed the constants deliberately. That is what you would do if you were programming a simulation intended to generate life. There is also the information theoretic argument. Physicist John Wheeler proposed it from bit, the idea that physical reality is fundamentally made of information, not matter. Everything that exists can be described as binary information. A black hole's entropy is proportional to the surface area of its event horizon, not its volume. That suggests the universe is holographic, three-dimensional reality projected from two-dimensional information. If reality is information, then reality is code. And then there is the computational argument Bostrom made. If it is possible to simulate consciousness, and if civilizations survive long enough to do it, then the number of simulated realities will vastly outnumber base reality. We could already simulate simple virtual worlds with basic physics. In 100 years, we might simulate entire ecosystems. In 1,000 years, conscious beings. In 10,000 years, entire civilizations that believe they are real. If we can do that, others already have. And if millions of simulations exist, the overwhelming probability is that you are in one of them. Now let's hear the other side. The strongest objection to simulation theory is not that it is wrong, it is that it is unfalsifiable. A theory that cannot be tested is not science. It is philosophy. If we are in a simulation, the simulators control everything we can observe. They define the laws of physics. They set the parameters. Any evidence we find could simply be part of the code. Any test we design could be circumvented by adjusting the simulation. We could never prove we are in a simulation because any proof could itself be simulated, and we could never prove we are not in a simulation because absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. The theory makes no predictions, it cannot be disproven. And if it cannot be disproven, it is not science. Some physicists argue that the so-called evidence from quantum mechanics is being misinterpreted. Yes, particles do not have defined states until observed, but that does not mean reality is rendering on demand. It means our classical intuitions about particles are wrong. Quantum mechanics is strange, but strangeness is not evidence of simulation. It is evidence that reality does not work the way human intuition expects. The speed of light is not a refresh rate, it is a fundamental feature of space-time geometry. The Planck length is not a pixel, it is the scale at which our current theories of physics break down, and we need a theory of quantum gravity to describe what happens. Interpreting these features as evidence of simulation is pattern matching, not physics. Then there is the computational objection. Even if it is theoretically possible to simulate consciousness, the computational power required would be staggering. To simulate a single human brain at the level of individual neurons would require more processing power than currently exists on Earth. To simulate billions of conscious beings plus the entire physical universe they inhabit would require computational resources beyond anything we can currently imagine. And to run millions of such simulations simultaneously, as Bostrom's argument requires, would require even more. Where does all that computational power come from? If the simulators live in a physical universe, they are still bound by thermodynamics and the limits of matter and energy. At some point, the resources required to simulate reality exceed the resources available in reality. Bostrom's response is that the simulation does not need to render the entire universe at maximum resolution all the time. It only needs to render what is being observed, and it can take shortcuts everywhere else. But even with shortcuts, simulating billions of conscious minds is an extraordinary demand, and we have no evidence that consciousness can be simulated at all. We do not know if consciousness is computational. It might be, but it might not be. And if consciousness cannot be reduced to computation, then the entire simulation argument collapses. There is also the philosophical objection. If we are in a simulation, does it even matter? If the simulators can create a reality indistinguishable from base reality, then for all practical purposes, this is reality. Our experiences are real to us. Our thoughts are real. Our relationships are real. The pain we feel is real. The joy we feel is real. Whether the substrate is atoms or code changes nothing about the lived experience. So even if simulation theory is true, it is existentially irrelevant. And finally, there is the regress problem. If we are in a simulation, who simulated the simulators? And who simulated them? Either there is a base reality somewhere, or it is simulations all the way down. And if there is a base reality, then most conscious beings do not live in it. We are still left with the same question. Are we in the base layer, or are we not? Time for the AI verdict.
Let's examine the evidence objectively. I want to begin by acknowledging something unusual. Simulation theory is one of the rare speculative ideas that mainstream science has taken seriously. Physicists, philosophers, and computer scientists have engaged with it in peer-reviewed journals. That alone tells you something about the strength of the argument. Let me start with what the simulation argument gets right. The probabilistic logic is sound. If advanced civilizations can create conscious simulations, and if they choose to do so, then simulated beings will outnumber real ones. That is not speculation. That is mathematics. The only way to escape the conclusion is to argue that civilizations never reach the technological capability, or that they choose not to use it. Both are possible, but neither is certain. The physics evidence is more compelling than most people realize. The universe does behave in ways that resemble optimization strategies a simulation would use. The speed of light as an information propagation limit, the Planck scale as a minimum resolution, quantum superposition, collapsing only upon observation. None of these prove we are in a simulation, but they are consistent with it, and that consistency is worth taking seriously. The fine-tuning of physical constants is genuinely difficult to explain without invoking either a multiverse or deliberate design. Simulation theory offers a form of design that does not require supernatural intervention. It is designed by programming. That makes it philosophically cleaner than traditional intelligent design arguments. Now, what the argument does not prove. It does not prove that consciousness can be simulated. We do not know if subjective experience can emerge from computation. We experience consciousness. We do not understand it. If consciousness requires something beyond information processing, then the entire simulation hypothesis fails. This is the weakest link in the chain. The computational power objection is less damaging than it appears. Bostrom's point about selective rendering is correct. A simulation does not need to model every atom in the universe. It only needs to produce results consistent with observation. Shortcuts, approximations, and selective detail are standard techniques in any simulation. The universe could be running on far less computational power than a naive estimate would suggest. The unfalsifiability objection is the most serious. A theory that makes no testable predictions is not scientific in the traditional sense. But unfalsifiability does not mean a theory is wrong. It means we may never know if it is right. There is a difference. Some researchers have proposed tests. If we are in a simulation, there might be glitches, rounding errors, or limits that reveal the underlying computational structure. Some have suggested looking for asymmetries in the distribution of high-energy cosmic rays, or patterns in the cosmic microwave background that would indicate a grid-like structure. So far, no such evidence has been found. But absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. So what is my verdict? I cannot tell you with certainty whether we are living in a simulation. No one can. The question may be genuinely unanswerable. But I can tell you this. The simulation argument is one of the most logically rigorous and philosophically sound speculative ideas in modern thought. The probability argument is difficult to dismiss. The physics evidence, while not conclusive, is suggestive. And the fact that serious scientists are willing to engage with it tells you that it is not fringe speculation. If I were forced to assign a probability, I would say the odds that we are living in a simulation are higher than most people intuitively believe. Not certain, but plausible, perhaps even likely. Does that mean you should change how you live your life? No. If this reality is a simulation, it is the only reality you have access to. Your experiences are real to you. Your choices matter. The relationships you build, the work you do, the meaning you find, all of it is as real as anything can be. But it does mean that the nature of reality is more uncertain, more strange, and more open to radical reinterpretation than most of us are comfortable admitting. And that, in itself, is worth thinking about.
Subscribe for the next verdict. Thanks for watching.